So it's 1347 and the world is going to hell in a handbasket. The plague is ripping through all of the known world, decimating populations in its wake. Dogs are eating corpses in Damascus and entire towns are evaporating in Egypt. As Europe is in the process of losing up to half of its population, it is trying to come up with a way to stop the spread of this disease. And boy, do they come up with some doozies. But what do? Come on, we'll show you. So everyone around you is getting sick. Family, friends, your asshole boss, everybody. And you are desperate to get this to stop. But we're not going to understand how to treat bacteria for hundreds of years, so you're on your own. Now there's a logical progression in trying to stop this. The first thing we're going to do is try to isolate it. Returning Italian sailors were required to spend 40 days off the coast before being allowed into port, making sure nobody got sick and died. This is where the term quarantine comes from. This makes sense because there are stories of unmanned ships just bobbing around in the water, the entire crew having succumbed to the plague before they could reach port, or maybe cut it off at the source. But that didn't work. So the next thing you would try to do, if you could, was run away. If you can't stop it coming to you, you get away from it. If people are passing the disease, get away from the people. But usually this is only an option for the rich who have the means to get away. And it turns out that didn't work either. Because it turns out the intensity of the plague isn't based on human population, but rather rat population. And rats live in the country just as much as the city. Learning that one actually surprised me. You would think getting away from people would be the answer to your problems. I honestly think it would solve most of my issues. Anyway, not the people in 1347, that's for sure. So then the next logical step is to cut it off at the source, by doing things like getting rid of all the pigs. Because pigs are unclean animals and spread disease, everybody knows that. Turns out, well, what about the dogs then? I know, the cats. This one's a double whammy, because not only did it not help, guess what cats like to do? That's right, they kill rodents, the very things carrying the plague. And so it just got worse. And something we have to understand is people did not want to tie Fido to a tree any more than we would want to today. This is not something that they did gleefully. But this is what happens when you're scared and you don't know what to do. Doing something, even the wrong thing, is often seen as better than doing nothing. Anyway, when that didn't work, people continued to look for a source. And things got even darker. Because in some places they started blaming segments of the population. And an oft-favored target reared its ugly head. I'm noticing everybody's getting sick around here. Except for, you know what's coming, the Jews. Now, why was the Jewish population singled out, you might ask? Like we said, they weren't getting sick at quite the same rate everybody else was. It couldn't be because Jewish people bathed weekly before Sabbath and washed their hands before meals, something the Christians were not frequently known to do. I've heard differing takes on how dirty Europeans were during this time period. Some sources saying people bathed as often as they could and washed their hands frequently. I mean, after all, who wants to be dirty? I've heard other sources say everybody fucking stank to high heaven because nobody wanted to fall into the sin of bodily pride. Either way, people saw a big enough disparity to assume a causal connection. And so the natural conclusion is they were poisoning the wells of the Christians. In 1348 in Strasbourg in eastern France, for instance, at one point 1,000 Jewish people were rounded up and all set alight. And I just try to imagine what witnessing something like that would have been like. Everybody around you is sick and dying. Because of that, the gears of society are starting to seize. Work slows down as the bodies pile up. And in the midst of all that, you get to see 1,000 people set alight. If this isn't some punishment for some horrific sin of the past, then how is this not the end of the world? Maybe the issue doesn't lie in the corrupted outside world, but instead the problem lies within. It is not until I turn inward and atone for my sins will we ever have hope of this pestilence ending. And that's never any fun. Flagellation and why it's not as sexy as it sounds. Next time.